podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Maurine Kwende. I'm the CEO and founder of EMK Learning Solutions. This podcast is for leaders and professionals across learning and development, coaching, talent development, human resources, or anyone working to grow, lead well, build stronger leaders, teams, and cultures. This month, we are continuing our series titled Culture by Design: What Leaders Reward, Permit, and Model. So last week, we talked about how everyday leadership patterns quietly communicate culture, whether or not leaders intend them to. So today, we're going to be looking closely at one of the most powerful of those patterns, and that is what leaders reward. So the question I have for you today is, if someone looked only at who gets praised, promoted, recognized, and given attention on your team, would they describe your culture the same way you would? For many leaders, there may be a gap between the culture that they say they want, or the culture they say they describe, and the behaviors that actually receive recognition. And so this gap is important because what gets rewarded does not simply communicate appreciation. It teaches people what the organization considers valuable and what they should repeat. So now let's start with the leadership issue at the center of this episode. Recognition is one of the clearest signals a leader sends. It can often tell a more honest story than a stated value. So many leaders name the values they want their team to demonstrate, such as collaboration, well-being, accountability, and all that. But those values only shape their culture when they are reinforced through what the leaders consistently notice and reward. So what does your leader, or what do you reward people for? Do you reward them for gossip, for any of those stuff that are working against your values, or do you reward them for what is consistently aligned with your values? This is important because recognition is one of the most public forms of leadership communication that a team receives. It could be a promotion, a shout out during a meeting, being selected for an assignment, or it could be a simply hearing a leader say, I don't know what we would do without you, right? All these things, big or small, send a strong message about the values of the organization. So the team equally pays attention to who gets recognized, right? So for example, if someone is recognized for staying late, they get promoted for always being available and also receiving the most important opportunities. Over time, you're teaching employees that their own behavior towards what seems to be the greatest recognition is what is critical. So if you're rewarding them for staying late or for picking up too much slack, then that's really what you're enforcing. And that's something you might be doing without even realizing. Here is an example that you can think about. So every quarter, this employee received the most recognition, and this employee is the one who takes the most work, works longest hours, takes work home. They're always available, never say no to another request. Now, another employee who kind of is great at managing priorities while delegating appropriately, and then, interestingly, their behavior doesn't get any attention. So what the leader is doing unintentionally is rewarding overwork, right, instead of the commitment. So what about your team? It's important to make this decision because what leaders repeatedly celebrate becomes a signal. So let's talk about this topic titled Overfunctioning. So this has been a pattern of leadership for a while. Overfunctioning happens when someone consistently takes on more responsibility than they should, solving problems than they should. And so this challenge can look like high performance, right? Where the person might be highly competent and willing to help. And then they now becomes the person that is known for, and that person that everyone needs to go to get things done. So these are great qualities, right? And those can be strengths. But when this pattern becomes constant, it can create dependency rather than capacity. So imagine if a leader or a manager with one exceptionally dependable employee, right? And so this person stays late, when another team member falls behind, that person, the manager, always steps in and complete the work. What do you think happens here? Right? Now the manager appreciates that employee by saying, I don't know what I would do without you, and then constantly giving that employee more work. And so the question is, what are you teaching the other employees, right? What is the pattern that you're noticing? And how can that hurt your leadership? That is why the better leadership question is not simply who deserves recognition, it's what behavior am I reinforcing through this recognition? You can recognize someone's contribution while still examining the larger system. So why is one person being continually rescuing the team when this work could be redistributed, right? So a strong culture does not depend on one person carrying everything. So I want to encourage you to reward what you want repeated. If you want collaboration, recognize collaboration. If you want accountability, recognize accountability. If you want recognition, if you want innovation, recognize innovation. Thoughtful experimentation, learning new ideas before they get published. So think about those actions that you're reinforcing. So here's one thing that I want to encourage you to do. Here's your action for this week. Conduct an audit and think about the last people that you praised, recognized, or even thanked. Write down the behavior you were reinforcing and ask yourself, if everyone on my team repeated this behavior, would it create the culture I want? That can tell you a great deal, right? So you might even discover that you're already reinforcing collaboration. You may also discover that some other behaviors you have been rewarding are contributing to overwork, urgency, or even overfunctioning. So the goal here is not to stop recognizing hard work. It is about being more intentional about what your recognition is teaching people to repeat. So with that said, I would like to invite you to a webinar coming up on August 20th, and it's really about overfunctioning because it's a pattern that I continuously see among highly capable leaders, including senior level women leaders. They're performing at high level, solving problems, but then they're carrying responsibility that other people have gradually come to them to depend on. So if this is something that you're experiencing, I would like to invite you to sign up for this webinar, and you will find the registration link in the comment section. So as we close this webinar, this episode today, I would like to recap that recognition is not a neutral act. Conduct your reward audit and ask yourself, if everyone repeated what I was rewarding, what kind of culture would that create? Next week, we're going to continue the Culture by Design series and talk about what leaders permit, how it becomes a culture. And so if this episode gave you something to think about, share it with another leader who is intentionally building their workplace culture. And if you've not done so already, sign up to our platform so you can be able to catch up on the rest of this series. And if you'd like to go even deeper between episodes, I want to invite you to sign up for our newsletter for additional reflection tools and resources. This is Dr. Maurine signing off. Until next time, pay attention to what you're rewarding, because what gets rewarded has a way of becoming the standard. I'll see you same time next week.